Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very special live tribute. Today, we gather not only to remember, but to celebrate the life and legacy of Kumaran Naidu, a pioneer in South African Indian cinema, a storyteller, and a man whose work gave a voice to communities that had long gone unseen on screen. Through his lifetime, his passion, and his dedication, Kumaran didn't just create entertainment, he created opportunity, representation, and inspiration for so many. His presence, his energy, and the way he connected with people left a mark that will not be forgotten. To help us reflect on his life and the impact he made, I'm joined by Anisa from Glamour by Zara, who knew him personally and experienced his journey in a meaningful way. Anisa, thank you so much for being here with us today. Truly appreciate you sharing your memories, your insights, and your heart as we honor Kumaran's legacy together. How are you, Anisa?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much, Siddharth. It's an honor to to honor or to speak about Kumaran Naidu today. And but just a quick disclosure, I'm not related to him. We got acquainted through Glamour by Zara, and whatever I share with you today is purely my own personal experience and the journey that we went through with him while Kumaran was making his last movie, Run for Your Life. But something that I'd like to tell you, Siddharth, Kumaran wasn't just a filmmaker. He was a visionary. He was a true pioneer in South African Indian cinema. And through the movies like Broken Promises and Run for Your Life, he created something meaningful, something respectful for our communities, especially like for KZN and Johannesburg. He didn't just tell stories, he created a sense of pride for the Indian community, and he created possibility because a lot of um, young actors, yeah, especially amongst the Indian community, they lack that confidence, and that's what Kumaran was all about. He created hope. He created a space for us in the Indian community.
Awesome. All right. There's already a comment question here, and I will let this one go to you. This is from Alia Rayman Salim 786. Hi, are there any details about his funeral? Will it be live streamed for those unable to attend?
Absolutely. So I will share the link to you, Siddharth. You can post it on your YouTube live. It's tomorrow from 10:30 till 1 o'clock. The funeral's taking place in the south of Johannesburg, Indonesia, and I'm happy to share the details with.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Okay, there's another comment question here, which is kind of connected to my following question. So it's actually appropriate for me to actually ask you this. This is from Jitin Reshika. It's a great loss, and many will feel the absence of Kumaran. Heartfelt condolences to his family and friends. Anissa, please share your memorable moments.
I think that was the purpose of this tribute today, Siddharth. It was to share memories. It was to celebrate Kumaran. Kumaran was never a sad guy. For those of you that knew him, he always had a joke up his sleeve. And over the years of recording or the behind the scenes for Run for Your Life, we built a lot of memorable um, uh, moments. But I think what stands out, and a lot of you guys would appreciate this when I say it, what stood out was the fact that nobody really knows what happens behind the scenes. Although we came in just doing the makeup and the special effects, like if you saw the guys beaten up, that's where Glamour by Zara came in. He also used our premises, and that's how talented he was. Imagine he took an empty room and he turned it into a scene. And that for me was like, wow, it takes someone with so much of talent, so much of knowledge of making movies, because we know movies are not real,
Hmm.
and to be able to construct those scenes into full on movie scenes, that for me was amazing. I mean, like we had like a little basement, and one of the parts of the movies, it almost looked like he was in this um, like a parking alley. So he was really talented, and I think the memorable part was working with him behind the scenes.
Awesome. All right. Ali is thanking you she says, thank you so much. He was truly a great person. I was actually someone who was in the movie Broken Promises 5.
Nice, nice, nice.
Awesome. All right. Kumaran touched many lives. What do you believe was the core of his influence that made people feel so connected to him?
So basically, um, if what really made him, what like people connect to him, I would think, um, like he felt South African lives mattered, Indian actors mattered,
Mhm.
and he had a place in the film industry that some of us could only dream of. And
Mm,
what many people don't know about Kumaran, that he came from a home of making movies. His late dad was also a movie producer. And when his dad passed away, and this Kumaran shared with us, personally, his dad had also passed away, I think, in his 50s. And when his dad had passed away, that's when Kumaran took over. And his vision was with a lot of hope, and he created that sense that he wanted to make something big for the Indian community. And although, Siddharth, I'm not sure if you know, maybe some of the guys that are listening in would validate, he didn't have the support from the Indian community. Nobody really saw his vision the way we saw it, but it never stood in his way. He never um, let it slip through the cracks. He stood up. He made something out of reflection of the community, the humor, the reality. Because if you had to sit back and if you had to think about his movies, that's just exactly how the Indians were back in the days. How they spoke, the type of homes that we came from, and things like that. So I think he was very creative, and he used real life experiences to create a movie that people could laugh at. Humor really heals. People could laugh at, but also sit back and think, hey, hold on, there is a little bit of reality in it.
awesome. In times like these, legacy becomes important. What lessons from Kumaran's life do you think people should carry forward?
Okay, so that one's a good question, right? And I think for me, one of the biggest lessons from Kumaran's journey is not to wait for the perfect conditions.
Okay.
He built something meaningful when support, especially from our own communities, wasn't where it should be. It didn't let him feel limited. He remained resilient, consistent. He focused on his vision. And I think that kind of mindset to keep building regardless is something people should really carry. Like, do it, get up and do it. That was Kumaran. He was never a person that, even today, as we pay tribute to him, Siddharth, I wanted to be happy, because if you knew Kumaran personally, the thing that I want to share with you, right? So at the last premiere, we got this habit, when we see each other, we like hug each other. So I go there and I hugged Kumaran. And when I hugged him, he was like, Anisa, hold it. You're going to kill me. I was like, what's a hug going to kill you? And then he says, check here. And then he opens his jacket, and he had his dialysis machine. And that's when I knew he was sick. I knew our
Oh,
friend was sick. But you would never say, that's what I'm trying to say. He still laughed and he joked and he took photos with us, and he said, don't miss this pose and don't miss that pose. And And that's what you take out of life's lesson. Don't let your issues affect everybody, because even the ones that are going through the most difficult challenges in life are those that would have the happiest smiles, and you'd never know.
So basically, Kumar in a nutshell was someone that was positively stubborn because he would never let anyone or anything get in his way, kind of thing.
I mean, I would say that, and like sometimes during shooting, it would happen in winter, and I'm not sure if you know how harsh the winters in Johannesburg can be.
Yeah.
And we'd all be like in our jackets and trying to make the most out of it. Sometimes it went to like 2, 3 in the morning. But if you looked at Kumar, and you would swear it's a hot summer's day, and the man was just getting his work done, and that's him. That's him, not sugarcoating. With the goodness came his character, and he had a character that people could relate to. People could say, okay, hold on. He was someone that, he would come down to who you are. He never saw himself as a movie director or a movie producer or anybody famous.
Awesome. How has Kumara's journey inspired you personally, whether in your work, mindset, or relationships?
So the inspiration for me will be his personal journey for the last movie, Run for Your Life. And again, I have a lot of respect, Siddharth, for the
Mhm,
process. A lot of people take it for granted, because when you see the movie and when you're laughing or eating the popcorn, nobody really knows, what goes on behind the scenes. And the process can be quite daunting. Imagine having to film the same thing 5 times, 10 times, because someone didn't get their part right or it didn't fit. And I think for me, the thing that inspired me personally was his, like, he always like pushed. He never made it feel like you got to give up. He was consistent. And 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 something that I think even yourself, for your type of business, or for your family as well, being persistent, not necessarily pushy, but being persistent, you'll always enjoy what you're doing. And I think that's where Kumaran, what inspired me, because imagine a winter, 2 o'clock in the morning, everyone's with hats. Every time you talk, it's like you're smoking. But that's how cold it used to be. But when you looked at Kumaran, it's like, hey guys, I appreciate you. I thank you for coming out. Nobody would really do this for me. And the process of getting a movie done, yo guys, it's not as easy as it looks. It's really not as easy as it looks.
Uh, Finally, for those who may not have known him closely, how would you describe Kumara Naidu's spirit and what he stood for?
So I would say he had very uplifting spirits. He was very driven, a good person overall, Siddharth. Not someone. It was very hard to see him like down or withdrawn. Well, I guess that was most of the time we're being professional. We were in a work environment. But if I had to, sum it up, I would celebrate his life. I'd really celebrate the impact that he's had in the Indian community, in the Indian cinema. So for someone, like, he could even compare himself to like a Raj Bansi. He made a name for him in the Indian community. And when we celebrate him, we can celebrate him as a trailblazer, someone who was committed, someone who believed in what he did. And he doesn't just leave behind, his movies. He leaves behind that void, because I've seen him, literally teach someone how to do their scene. And he would go like, you have to be a villain, and this is what you need to do. Or you'd have to be a retard, and this is what you need to do. So he doesn't just leave behind, his movie making. The community has lost someone that was true to his passion. He would take a guy from TikTok that believed in himself but never acted, and he would like, I believe in you. And if you listen to what I'm asking you to do, you'd be great. And majority of the guys that were in our last movie were from TikTok. And that
Wow.
was because, yeah, Kumaran believed in them. And Kumaran not just guided them, he turned these youngsters into having that belief that one day they could become aspiring actors. And then just another fun fact that maybe you guys don't know, but some of the like the famous Indian South African actors started off with Kumaran. There's a
Wow.
guy named Teshan, there's a lady named Maheshni, I think. Even
Mm.
Jailoshni worked with him. So he had the
Oh,
opportunity to work with a lot of successful Indian South African actors. But Kumaran himself, he leaves behind a legacy. I would always celebrate him. I don't think I'd ever disrespect Indian movies again. And we grew up thinking, what's local? But local is Leka Siddharth. Local is
mm.
Leka. Kumaran he made it something for all of us.
On that beautiful note, thanks so much for your time, Anisa, and I hope to catch up with you once again in the future.
Absolutely, and I really enjoyed this tribute as well. And I just want to end saying that those of you want to know about the funeral, I'm happy to share the stream link as well as the actual funeral details as to where the funeral is going to be. And, it's a sad loss, but I want to celebrate him. I want to laugh about the things that he's done. I want to think of all the good things. Like even when the staff at Glamour by Zara heard he passed away, they were taken back as like, he was such a fit guy. So death has no cause.
Mm.
It doesn't pick. It doesn't say who's going next. But I really celebrate him, and I thank you for giving this opportunity to pay tribute to him. It's quite a remarkable thing.
Most welcome.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you.